Okay, so we all love sword lesbians, but can we take a moment to appreciate Aros Sapphics? Hi, and welcome back to this channel, where I talk about arms and armour, women's histories, and the weird, unexpected ways these two subjects often intersect. And today it's all about arms and arcades, because we're talking about weaponry in video games. This is part 3 of me exploring mythological and historical inspirations around weaponry in the video game Hades, one of my current favourite video games. For a bit more context and my thoughts on the game in general, I recommend also watching the first 2 videos in this series, but to roughly summarise, great game, great visuals, and great LGBTQI representation. And of course some awesome weapon design as well, which is why we're here. In the first video, we covered the inspiration behind Versailles, or the Eternal Spear, which is more specifically a bident. In the second one, we explored Aegis, the Shield of Chaos. And in this one, let's look at Coronacht, the Heart-Seeking Bow. Well, the Heart-Seeker in the game is associated with Hera, goddess of women, marriage, family, and childbirth, and also the long-suffering wife of Zeus, and is used in long-range attacks. Coronacht, not Hera. The in-game lore on the bow also says this: I have a distaste for the bow, it must be said, for it was by the bow that my own life was ended early, in a manner of debatable glory. Given the lore is written from the viewpoint of Achilles, he's talking about the moment his, Achilles' heel is pierced by an arrow during the Trojan War, which is why he's in the underworld and is serving as Zagreus, the main hero's mentor. Which does actually link to historical records of the bow being a popular weapon for the ancient Greeks during warfare, and a look at the Iliad, which talks about the Trojan War, also shows some references to archers being more or less snipers in terms of taking down key military figures. The importance of the bow and arrow as a weapon for the ancient Greeks also translates to the ancient Greek deities that wielded it. Not actually Hera in Greek mythology, although she's terrifying enough without weapons, to be honest. Just look at all the various stuff she inflicts on various mortals that she's not happy with. But the twins Apollo and Artemis. Honourable mention for Apollo, he is the god of archery, music, dance, truth, healing, and diseases, which seems contradictory, but also the sun and light. Yes, that's all. But he doesn't actually feature within the video game Hades, unlike his twin sister, who actually plays quite a prominent role within it. And she is the goddess of, let's go, the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, the moon, and chastity. Why did I have to do a little chastity? I'm not sure, but let's go with it. By the way, do you just sometimes get the impression that the gods just pick these things out at random? Because what is this? What is this list? And again, you are the goddess of the hunts and wild animals? Make it make sense, please. But really, Artemis is full of these contradictions and different facets of her character and who she is as a person. First off, in her resolve to remain a virgin, which can be interpreted in lots of different ways. The first is as a huntress. Apparently, hunters avoided shenanigans before the hunt to remain ritually pure. And also because they were scared the scent of shenanigans would scare off their prey. Just like the mention of something that most people around the world partake in, scares off YouTube, apparently. But secondly, virginity in ancient Greece would have preceded marriage to a man, which as such represented becoming subservient to him. Another day, another little sexist fun fact. But Artemis basically went, nah, I don't want to do that. And her reasoning was basically this: if I take a vow of chastity, I won't have to deal with any husbands, and as such I'll retain my power and independence. Ancient Greek chastity loophole. And it's often debated to what extent Artemis has taken a vow of chastity, or could be interpreted as asexual or aromantic, respectively referring to an orientation defined by lack of physical attraction or lack of romantic attraction, and which can be mutually exclusive or occur simultaneously. And a fair amount of things can back this up in terms of Greek mythology, like a reference to the fact that Aphrodite has no power over Artemis, Athena, which we've talked about in our previous video in the series, or Hestia, the virgin power triad of Mount Olympus. But other stories also have Artemis surrounded by a crowd of nymphs, some of which she is implied to have a very strong bond with. And I mean, Very strong bonds. Just gals being pals in the forest. Which indicates another tasty little ancient Greek loophole, in which virginity and loss of it for a woman are defined by relationships between a man and a woman, not between two women. And really, there aren't any references to women losing their virginity to other women. Not really in the sense of if they were there, they would be documented, but more in the sense of if they were there, chroniclers didn't really care because, hey, it's women. Who cares about women, right? Well, one of these women is Callisto, whose story intertwined with that of Artemis, because in the original myth, she is a companion of the goddess who also takes a vow of chastity. And just a heads up that in the next few minutes, I will be discussing themes of sexual assault because of the violent misogynistic themes at the heart of most of these myths. Because Callisto is approached by the god Zeus, taking on the appearance of Artemis to get close to her under false pretenses. And when Artemis finds out that Callisto is pregnant as a consequence, she is enraged and banishes her for no longer being a virgin, transforming her into a bear. Which is why we have the Ursa Major and the Ursa Minor in the sky in terms of constellations. Big Bear and Little Bear. So there is a lot to unpack in this myth, in which implied queerness and sexual violence intertwine. But ultimately, it does more than infer that Artemis and Callisto were not unaccustomed to being close to one another long before the incident that would drive them apart. Now, this story, as one of the few stories that hints at some Sapphic suggestions in terms of Artemis, still involves a goddess of Greek mythology changing women into animals. Just apparently a thing that goddesses love doing for some reason. But overall, Artemis' stories do suggest the idea of solidarity with other women. After a young girl is abandoned by her father as a baby, Artemis saves her and sends a bear to nurse the baby. Although to be fair, she apparently in some versions then grows jealous and sends a bear to knock her once protege down a peg because people were claiming that she was a better hunter than her. So moral ambiguity and bears to do your bidding. The Artemis story. This girl was Atalanta, and she seems to be one of the rare human women heroes in these Greek mythological stories aside from the Amazons. And she also eventually gets turned into a lioness. Greek mythology, everyone. Throughout all of this, Artemis's bow is a constant symbol with its own ambiguity. The golden arrows shot by her golden bow could bring disease to women. Fun! And they can also be used to swear oaths of virginity on, as was the case for Callisto, because there's truly nothing more heterosexual than swearing an oath of virginity on the bow of your very, very, very close companion that you frolic around with in the forest. Sometimes her arsenal extended to hunting knives and other symbols of the hunt. And multiple stories show Artemis was just as likely to use her weapons against people than wild animals, sometimes transforming people into wild animals to do so. She's independent and commands respect, yet also invites a sense of solidarity for those allowed in her nymph party of perpetual virginity. She's multifaceted, and the video game does a great job of capturing that. Within the dialogue, Artemis is first presented as someone who stands slightly apart from the rest of the gods and could be considered as somewhat a lone wolf, focusing on hunting, and who, of course, grants Zagreus archery sharpshooter related boons. But she slowly warms up to him and provides something hard-earned in doing so, her trust. But her dialogue also hints at the queer, reimagined story with Callisto in a piece of dialogue that says this: "My Callisto, she can turn into a bear." A much more loving reinterpretation of the myth of Callisto and Artemis that removes the violence of the original story and leaves space for love instead. And yeah, it's not accurate, but who cares? I can guarantee that somewhere in ancient Greek or ancient Rome, some Sapphic girl was reading that whole story and thinking, this sucks. I'm gonna reimagine this on my own terms. And in doing so, reimagining a queer, happier future for herself and the characters involved. A fictional one that could shape and lend hope to reality. As queer stories throughout history are attached to enough shame, trauma, and pain, let us have and reinvent things. And through old stories, create new ones that, just like a legendary arrow, aim straight for the hearts. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at Carmine Claire for more of my Sword Lady and Arrow Lady ramblings. And you can also have a look at my donation corner to stay aware and involved in terms of what's going on right now and donate if you can. Stay safe, sword lovers and arrow lovers, and see you in another video.